Okay, here we are in Chapter 8. This is the lecture for October 6th, a Tuesday, and the tests haven't been graded. In fact, I had to plan out the rest of the semester yesterday instead of grading tests, but I don't think it's going to be very long. Hopefully, everybody submitted PDFs or maybe showed work in Blackboard. That was possible too, although a little harder. But work had to be shown for several of the problems, and some not, but depending on the problem. But we'll have more to say about that later. Um, it just made sense to do Chapter 8 ahead of Chapter 6. This is an election year, and perhaps in a normal semester it'd be doing in the numerical order, but because of the election year, we felt that it was much more appropriate to do this before Election Day, or right around the same time as Election Day. So, voting and social choice is Chapter 8. So, the idea here, we're going to talk about the 4 sections, pretty much half a section per day. Tuesdays usually recorded, Thursdays usually live. And measuring voting power. Does my vote count? People want to know that. That's certainly in the media nowadays. Does your vote count? I certainly hope it does. And I'm not going to get into politics, but I will say please vote. You're an American. You should vote if you're a citizen, that is, and most of you are, I believe. Voting systems. How do we choose a winner? And fair division. What is a fair share? Apportionment. Am I represented? So all these questions, we'll try to be answering them. This version does not show the electoral college map of the United States. I wish it did. In your book, you'll see it's there. Maybe I can punch that up sometime and show it to you. I'm sure you've seen it before. As you know, in a presidential election, it isn't just one election. It's 51 separate elections, and electoral votes are assigned to each of the outcomes. 2 states actually split their votes, Maine and Nebraska. Besides them, everybody else is winner take all. Winner take all. So that explains the discrepancy sometimes between popular vote and electoral vote. It's happened twice in the last 20 years where the popular vote did not lead to an electoral college winner. And it's happened about 6, maybe 7 times since the country started this plan back in the 1700s, believe it or not. Famous presidents such as Abraham Lincoln only got, 38 point something percent of the vote? He won. There were 4 major candidates that year, and he got enough electoral college votes. He actually had a majority in the electoral college. Of course, there was a civil war brewing, and 2 of the people were basically Southerners. And well, we don't need to get into that kind of history, but we'll talk about the Hamiltonian method. He's obviously very popular nowadays, and Jeffersonian method of voting, and we'll talk about all that. But for example, electoral college, just to ramble on a little bit here, California has 55 electoral votes. There's a chance after the census we may actually lose one of those for the first time ever. They're saying it's kind of a borderline call because our growth rate is not quite kept up with the United States growth rate. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And you've got Texas at 38 electoral votes. New York has 29. Florida has 29. So that's the top 4 right there. And then you've got very small states that only have 3. The reason they get 3 is because every state has 2 senators, no matter how big or how small they are, and everybody gets at least 1 representative of the House of Representatives. So that's a minimum of 3, and right now a maximum of 55 for California. Well, enough of that. We'll talk more about that as the time comes along. But let's get into the first part of 8.1 and see how that can go. This is called measuring voting power. Does my vote count? And so we have some definitions here and certainly some examples that will hopefully help you. We have what's called a voting coalition. That's a group of voters who vote the same way. The math, by the way, in this chapter is not very difficult, but there are a few definitions that have to be kind of followed. So we'll see what we can do to explain them. Now, we have a voting coalition. We have a winning coalition, a set of voters with enough votes to determine the outcome of an election, which is typically majority rules, but sometimes it isn't. If it's not a winning coalition, it's a losing coalition. And quota is the number of votes necessary to win the election in a voting system. Typically, a majority plus, that is half plus 1, 50% plus 1. Well, anyway, let's look at this example here. There are 3 delegates to a county convention. Abe has 4 votes from his precinct. Ben has 3 votes, but Condi has 1 vote. A simple majority of the votes wins. So what would the quota be? Well, we have a total of 8. See if I can write on this, turn it on. Half of 8 would be 4. 4 is not quite enough. You'd have to have 5 for the quota. So 8 divided by 2 plus 1 is 5. That's a formula, but most people kind of do it in their head. If you had 100 people, you'd have to have 51 for your quota. Half is 50 plus 1 is 51. Make a table listing all the coalitions of voters. Designate which ones of them are winning coalitions. So this is just a table-making type of exercise. Okay, they're answering the question here. There are 8 votes, so the quota for simple majority is 5. 4 plus 1. Here's the following table showing all possible coalitions and votes that each coalition controls. The last column indicates whether the coalition, the grouping, the coalition is like a group, could be all of them, could be one of them, but we see if we have a majority or not. And certainly if you get them all in there, Abe plus Ben plus Condi, that's all 8 votes. It's unanimous, and of course, that's a winning coalition. See, I told you the math was easier. Now we talk about this pairing. Abe and Ben add up to 7 votes, but that's definitely more than 5. That's a winning coalition. So let's take a look at another possibility, Abe plus Condi. Abe has 4. Notice the number is right above Abe, and then Condi has 1. So we look at this one, and that's 5, and yes, that barely made it, but it's definitely a coalition. But Abe by himself is not a winning coalition. Got 4, that's half, but it's not more than half. So that's a no. We'll have Ben and Condi get together. 3 plus 1 is still 4. Still a no. Ben by himself, only 3. Condi, just 1. So the rest of them are not winning coalitions. So that's really what we have here, is that type of coalition, and whether they make it or not. I have other examples I could do. I don't know if I have room on the page. Let me see if I have. Well, let's just take a look at this one. Before we get into another example, I want to see about this particular one. Abe and Ben and Condi. We talk about extending this a little bit further and talk about what's called a critical voter. So you never know, you might be the critical voter. A member of a winning coalition is a critical voter if a coalition becomes a losing coalition when that voter is removed. So they're indispensable in a way. So that's always nice to know you're indispensable. Here's the example. The table below contains information from the 3 winning coalitions in the previous example. So as you probably noticed, I checked off the 3 that were winning coalitions before. Now we have those 3 right here. You could say ABC for short, AB for short, and AC for short, all 3 of the possibilities. So what about critical voters? Well, let's see. We go through and remove those that might make a difference. If you take Abe out of the winning mix here, Abe is the critical voter, because you take Abe away, you have 8 minus 4 is only 4. Suddenly that's a no. So Abe has to be there. You could take Ben out, you could take Condi out with no loss in quality. You take out Ben, Ben has 3, you'd have 5, but that's still a winner. And of course you take out Condi, that's only 1, and that's definitely a winner. So the only critical voter we have is Abe. But that's only the first coalition. We have 3 coalitions. So here's the second one, which is just Abe and Ben. They're both critical. If we take either one of them out, we're doomed. Doomed to not having a winning coalition, that is. And so let's just take a look. For number 2, that was 1, here's number 2. If we have 7 total, and we take away Abe, which is 4, that's only 3. Oops. And then we had 7, and we take away Ben, which is 3, we only have 4. Neither one of those are winners. They're both critical voters. And then the third coalition, apparently the same thing happens. This one was just barely there with only a 5. So that one seems kind of obvious. If number 2's that way, then 3 definitely follows. So if we have the 5 total amongst the pair, and Abe decides to change his mind, we're down to only 1 vote. Is that a winner? Nope. Now we take Condi out from the 5, take the 1 away, we're down to only 4. Now that's a close one, but still, they're both critical voters. They both have to be there. Whereas in the first coalition, Ben and Condi didn't matter so much. They weren't critical voters. Now they mattered. I don't want to mean anything else by that, but they weren't what they call critical voters. So we could summarize this in the following coalition table. So they make a kind of a big deal out of what you might think isn't that big a deal. They have the different possibilities, and Abe and Ben and Condi had a total of 8 votes, and yes, of course, it was winning, and the critical was just summarizing what we've just done. So this is just nothing new, but Abe is the critical voter that went with that first winning coalition. So I'll put the numbers down over here. The second winning coalition had a total of 7 votes. Yes, it was a winner, and both Abe and Ben were critical. So they just list them because Condi had nothing to do with this one. And the third coalition with Abe and Condi adding up to 5 votes, yes, that's a winner, and both Abe and Condi have to be considered. Now, when you go to the other losing coalitions, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we don't have any critical voters because it wasn't a winner. It was a no. So that's part of the problem. You have to have a winner for us to even talk about critical voters. So winning coalition and critical voters, they have a couple of things that go with this, some of which might be necessary, some might not be. A set of voters with enough votes to determine the outcome of an election is a winning coalition. And a voter in a winning coalition, we just said, is critical for that coalition if the coalition is no longer winning when that voter is taken away. So they're vital. They're a critical voter. And you can do the summarization with a coalition table. Now, here's a math formula for us. For n voters, there are 2 to the nth power minus 1 possible coalitions, each of which includes 1 voter. Because if you just had 2 to the n, you could allow for the possibility of nobody voting at all, which is a bit absurd, so we don't go in that direction. So we take away the 1 to throw away the, as they call it, the null set when nobody's there. Which is technically a possibility. We'll just remove that one. So the minus 1 turns out to be kind of important. 2 to the nth. Let's take a look at 7. We're not going to do this example, but if we had 7 voters, there would be 2 to the 7th possibilities. I believe that's 128. You can figure that out if you'd like. And that's a number of possibilities for voters to be in or not in a coalition. This includes the possibility of all the voters not being in any coalition. So we subtract the 1 for the possibility that nobody was there at all, which is a bit absurd. So they tossed that one away. So it's really 127. And sometimes, clearly if you had like 1 million voters, 2 to the millionth power would be absurdly large. So these are only really practical in a smaller sense. We have a couple of other things that we could talk about. I do want to follow this up with another example, but I'll get to those afterwards. We have this thing called the Bonzoff Power Index. The number of times a voter is critical in a winning coalition divided by the total number of instances in which any voter is critical. So you've got a voter divided by any voter. So those are the key words I find. So it's a ratio, and that tells you how powerful this particular voter is. And it could be done either as a fraction or a percentage or even just a proportion if you prefer with decimals. We're not going to be that picky about it, but fractions should be reduced fractions, I imagine. Anyway, use the coalition table 8.1 to compute the Bonzoff index for each county convention delegate described in the previous examples. So we can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back and look at the table. Let's see, do they have it on the following slide? No, they don't. I'm going to have to go backwards to it. And just so we get an idea where we're headed, there were 5 instances in which any voter was critical. So the Bonzoff Power Index, this person got his name on his power index here, of any voter is the number of times that voter is critical divided by 5. Let's go back and take a look at that instance here. We had 5 total critical voters. Notice we had 3 winning coalitions. This is different. We have a total of 5 voters. Abe, Abe Ben, Abe Condi. And then we take a ratio of each individual person. For example, Abe shows up 3 out of 5. So Abe is 3/5. And that could be written as 0.6, which of course is 60%. The others, of course, only show up 1 out of 5 apiece, which is 0.2 or 20%. And that would be either Ben or Condi. So just scribble this in between. I'll just put a connector there. And let's go back to the slide and see how they summarized it. Abe was critical 3 out of the 5 times. There's a Bonds-Off power index of 60%, 3/5 if you want. Ben and Condi both have similar scenarios. Ben was critical once out of the 5 times. Condi was critical once out of the 5 times. So they both have Bonds-Off power indices of 20% each, or 1/5 each. And once again, I'll go back and look. And Ben showed up once as a critical voter. Condi showed up once out of a total of 5. Abe had a monopoly on the first one, and then there were pairs on the others, but we have to get the grand total. So do not look at the total number of winning coalitions. That's a different story. This is the total number of critical voters. How many times did you show up on that list? That's the power index. Not too difficult to do. You just have to kind of practice a little bit of this, and it becomes no big deal. And I'll do another example in a minute, but in the first round of voting, way back in 1932, the Democratic National Convention, I'm old enough to remember that when conventions actually meant something, they actually didn't know who was going to be the winner a lot of the time, and they actually would decide these things. Sometimes they would go 100 ballots, lasting as much as 2 weeks. They weren't just political advertisements as they are now. Of course, there was some of that, but a lot of the time they're just on radio or not on any kind of media, and so they weren't really after people's votes. They were trying to find out who was going to be their candidate for president. Now, it turned out that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who wound up winning 4 terms, he's on the dime, very popular president, he received over 600 votes. Al Smith, who I've heard of before, he got about 200 votes, so it looks like Roosevelt's the clear winner. Garner got 90 votes, and there are other 7 candidates. Thankfully, they did not list them all. Whew, glad they didn't. They got together around 200 votes or so. So it is common that candidates form coalitions, and it turned out that 770 votes were required to win the nomination. As it turns out, the 770 votes is 2/3 of the total, so they used to make it tougher to win. And it turns out from this, there are only 1,154 total votes. They'll explain this on the next slide. Roosevelt already had a majority. Half of that is around 570 something, and he already had more than the majority, but they needed 2/3. The 770, one could check that. They had a kind of a strict situation. They really wanted to be sure of their candidate, even though they weren't sure at the time of the convention, sometime in the summer. So we got some questions here. What's the quota? Determine the winning coalitions, determine the critical voters in each winning coalition, determine the Bonds-Off index of each of the candidates. And we'll just say other for that 4th choice. So let's go through these one at a time and see how it goes. And they do point out 770 votes are required to win the nomination. That is the quota. They already gave you that one. But it is 2/3 of the 1,154, rounded to the nearest vote. So, yeah, 666.25, and they used to split votes back then, which is very weird. That was not enough, so we have to figure out what's going on. So we got the quota, 770. That's actually given to you. And here is a longer list. I am using the 2nd edition for the slides. The 3rd edition, I noticed, got rid of all the color and split up the tables into like 3 or 4 slides in some cases, making it unreadable. Now, this may be finer print, but at least you can read it all at a glance, which is, I find, helpful. So sometimes they have a new edition, it gets screwed up. Now, I'm saying your book is fine, but the slideshow that I like to use was not so good. So I'm using the older one that has color in it. Anyway, let's take a look at all the coalitions. And the first one is all of them. If they all bounded together and they all said, we'll just pick one and we'll just all go behind it, it's unanimous. So, of course, that's a winner. All 1,154 votes. And then we have Roosevelt, Smith, other. This is other. And then we have Garner. So that's also, I'm not going to write them down, but Roosevelt is R, S is Smith, O is other. Typically, that's put at the end, but since it actually came in 3rd place, and then Garner's 4th. Well, we take Garner out of the mix, and we still have Pawlenty. So, of course, that's a winning coalition. That's called RSO. RSG for the third one, I'm not going to number them all. We take the 195 or so off the list. We're still 950 something, plenty to get to the deal. Remember, 770 is what's needed. That's the quota. I'll spell that out. And so 958 is definitely enough. We take other and Garner out, just have Roosevelt and Smith. Yeah, that's still enough. We're good. We take just Smith out and have ROG. We're still good. So you see, it just takes a little bit of number crunching. This is a long table, however. We don't expect we'd be giving you these types of tables, I don't think. We just have Roosevelt along with other. That's actually enough right there. And that turns out to be the last one. All the rest are losers. So let's take a look at a few of them. Roosevelt and Garner. The first and fourth place group didn't quite add up to enough. That's a no. Roosevelt by himself, we already established, is a no. So this is just Roosevelt by himself. Has a majority, but that's not the rules here back in 1932. That's been changed since, by the way. Now we take Roosevelt away and everybody else is part of the deal. That's even worse because Roosevelt clearly had a majority. This is also a no. It won about 487 votes. And then all the smaller permutations or combinations don't work out either. Smith and other, about 400, no. Smith and Garner, 292, nope. Smith by himself, 200 something, nope. Other and Garner, 286, nope. Other by itself, 7 of them bundled together, remember. Almost 200, nope. And Garner certainly by himself, no way. So we have some winners and we have some losing coalitions as well. How many are there? Well, we had 4 people that are up. Well, we did bundle them. It would have been more than 4, but we just called this the other. I just called it just by the miscellaneous name. So we have that as really 4 categories. 2 to the 4th is 16, but we do throw away the absent one. We could have put one at the very bottom saying blank, 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 blank with 0, and of course that's a non-winning coalition, but that would have been a bit absurd. So they mercifully eliminate that possibility. So I would just be saying nobody can get along and do a coalition of any kind. Okay, so we only look at the winners, the top 6. Let's go back quickly and take a look. I checked off 6 of these. So yeah, the top 6 are what they replay on the next page. The accompanying table lists the winning coalitions only, along with the critical voters in each case. So this takes a little bit of work. If we have these individually, one at a time, go away, and I guess I won't be able to show you all the work here. But if we took Roosevelt out of the total, this is kind of the easy one, and you'd have 1154 minus 666. That means Roosevelt's definitely a critical voter with a majority, yeah. Notice how R shows up every single time. Every single one of them has an R in it. And then you take all the smaller ones away one at a time from the top winner, which is unanimous, and none of them matter, so to speak. They're not critical. So Roosevelt was the only critical one in the first winning coalition. So that's it for that. One that has the top 3 without Garner, still, if you took away, say, Smith away from the 1,063, let's just take a look at that one. So we have a 1,063. Let me just truncate the decimal 1,063, take away a truncated 201, and 862 is not what we're looking for. So we'd have 862 that's still not going to matter, so we do not worry about it. That's still greater than the quota, greater than Q, so not critical. Roosevelt, you take Roosevelt away any time, the 666 votes that Roosevelt got shatter the total votes and make it a non-winning coalition, which means that Roosevelt is always a critical voter. But what about this one where Smith apparently got a little bit of glory, so to speak? We start off when the third winning coalition. My pen is not working again, sorry. Yeah, I was afraid this would happen. It says it works and then it dies on me. Well, anyway, that's the third one. I'm going to have to get a pen that works. Frustrating. Okay, let me get the other pen. Just 1 second. Okay. little Oktoberfest music playing because it's so hot. It doesn't seem like fall. Hope that doesn't offend anybody. But anyway, we do have the third one. There we go, a working pen. Let's take away Smith and see what happens. You have your 958. I'm not going to worry about the decimal. Take away Smith, which is about 201. I'm just truncating, not even bothering to round. You have 757, but that's less than the 770. That means Smith is a critical voter. How about that? Obviously, Roosevelt is every time. And the same thing happens in the fourth situation. That's supposed to be a 4. Sorry about that. We take the 868 and take away the 201 for the Smith person, and that's 600 and, let's see, yeah, 667. That's still less than 770. And we did have a winner and switched over to a loser based on Smith. So these dots by Smith, those two cases, the third and fourth case, Smith shows how indispensable he is. And what about other? Although it's a group of 7, they're simplifying it a little bit. Let's go to the fifth coalition. We already know that Roosevelt's going to shatter all these numbers by subtracting 666. But if we take the fifth one and just call it 952, let's take away other. Let's verify that other actually works. Let's take away 195 approximately. That would give us 757. That is once again less than 770, less than the quota. So we have others being very important. And now in this sixth one, the last winning coalition, I keep saying the wrong word, you take away the other, 862 minus the 195, which is about 200, it'd be 667. And of course, that's less than the quota as well. So not only does R get a critical vote each time because it's just so darn big, majority tends to do that, but we have a stiffer requirement here. So we have a few other critical voters. Notice how Garner was the odd man out. Garner never showed up on this list. Not too good for his Bonzock index. Okay, so here we go. We have 10 instances in which a voter or candidate is critical. Let's go back and take a look at them. And let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm looking at the critical voters. There are 10 of those critical voters. And Roosevelt shows up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So as you can see, 6 out of 10, 3/5. Probably better just to use the very commonly used 60%. Very high Bonzock index. But Smith and other turn out to get more power than you might have thought, because as we saw, Smith and other both showed up 2 times each. Smith was critical twice out of 10 times. Just add them up, grand total of 10. And 2 out of 10 is 20%. Same with other. Even though other doesn't seem like it has that many votes, still a 20% power for the Bonzock index. But poor Garner never was critical. Didn't matter what happened to him. He gets a big 0% on his Bonzock power index. So we have other examples, but let's take a look at this here. And we have to compare the topic here with something else that we'll also be talking about. The Bonzock index is the number of times the voter is critical in some winning coalition divided by the total number of instances in which any voter is critical. So like 6 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. So you got a particular voter, and if they're never critical, they get a 0. And so expressed as a fraction or percentage, maybe a proportion. Something else we'll have time to talk about next time is the voters vote in order. Their votes are added as they vote. And this one will take an order, and this is going to be different. This will be for the next lecture as I do a little bit of a preview. The swing voter is the voter whose vote makes the total meet the quota and thus decides the outcome, but it has to be done in order. It's called a swing voter. It's the one that swings it to another side, so to speak. And so they talk about swing voters in the media. Sometimes they might not even be using that completely accurately, but I think they get the general idea correct. Whose vote makes the total. That's what happens because the ordering is so important here. You have to list all the permutations here. Which the swing voter is depends on the order the votes are cast. So different order would have a different swing voter a lot of the time. But somebody who has a lot of weight will show up pretty high on either one of these indices. So I guess I have time to work on another example here. Let's see about, oh yeah, they did have an introductory example. They did say What if somebody says this stuff isn't very important? Not only is it important for voting, we'll get to the Electoral College another day, not quite today, but they talk about what movie will you and your friends watch? You have to kind of come up with a plan. You're all checking Netflix or something like that, and you want to have maybe a vote and maybe put it in order. Say, well, I'll take that as my second choice, and everybody puts something down as a second choice. It just might be the winner, even though nobody picked it as their top choice. And I've seen textbooks get through that way, when nobody actually picked a textbook as their favorite, but everybody picked it as their second favorite. So of course it gets enough weight involved, if you're doing it that way, to come out ahead. So that's sort of an ordering situation. We'll talk about that another time. And inheritance and property settlements are often done this way. Or perhaps if you own shares in a particular stock and you go to the big meeting and you own 32 shares, but the person next to you has 32,000 shares, well, your bond stock index might be very close to zero, and theirs might be quite a bit higher depending on how many total shares there are out there. Well, anyway, there are lots of other examples like that. And I don't want to go too much longer, but I did have one example I wanted to look at. So let's go back here. So if we have number of votes, and this time we have Abe, Ben, and Condi, and Abe has 5 votes, Ben has 3 votes, and Condi has 3 votes. So I'll just go ahead and say A, B, C, Abe, Ben, and Condi. And then we look at the various winning coalitions. And so if we have those total votes and we pick an obvious winning coalition of a unanimous situation, we'll have a heading of total votes, total votes, which is 11. Is it a winner? Win, question mark? Yes. Why for yes? I'll just say yes. Okay, what about another winner? How about Abe and Ben? AB. This is similar to another example we did before. 5 plus 3 is 8. What is the quota? I didn't get there. With a quota, you take the total of 11. 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. And just make sure you get up to the next highest vote, so which is equal to 6. So you have to have 6 votes to have a winning coalition. So let's see how that would go. A plus B is 8, so that's a yes. What about A plus C? C and B are the same, so that's still an 8, and that's still a yes. So far we have 3 winning coalitions. What about A by himself? Only 5. 5 isn't quite to the quota of 6, so that's a no. What about another one where you put Ben and Condi, the 2 lightweights, together, but they add up to 6, and that's a winner. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 is more than half of 11. So that's how we have a winner there. And of course we have the smaller ones that clearly will not work. B by himself, C by herself are 3 apiece, and neither one of those are winning coalitions. So those are both no's. And so we have that as our coalition table. And so that would be our winning coalition table. Then one could come along and do other things to that and come up with critical votes and all that kind of stuff. But we are starting to run out of time a little bit. I think I will save this for next time, and also save stuff for the test review as well. But just to show you that the Try It Yourselves, which I just did one of them, can also show you a little bit of extra practice. Plus there are many, many homework problems here on the book that you could try on your own. And I haven't checked the WebAssign yet to see how they've done, and I'll be very interested to see what problems they pick, and I'll be changing them around if I don't like them. If I do like them, I'll be happy to include them. But we'll get into another power index called the Shapley-Shubik power index. Had to do with the ordering. That's the one thing we didn't put a name on. And these are just mathematicians that relatively recently came up with these indices. They're all done in the last less than 100 years. The book isn't really putting the dates down. I have another book that I read one summer about all that. And we'll talk about the critical voters, and we'll talk about how the other index had to do with putting them in order and then looking at all the orders. So it isn't like we're just looking at biased one particular ordering. We're looking at all the orderings. So the preview of the second half of 8.1, we'll talk about the next index, as we call it, the Shapley-Shubik index. They both apparently came up with the same thing together, so they both got credit. All right, so I think that'll probably do it for now. I haven't kept track of the time, but I think that's pretty close to half an hour. So be sure you're reading 8.1 and seeing how that goes, trying some of the simple math, but it does require making tables, so there's a little bit of perseverance involved, and so you have to kind of think about that. Okay, that'll do it for today. And stay cool. And can't wait for fall. All right, talk to you later. And talk to you live on Thursday, or next Thursday coming up. Bye bye.